Here's your translation in natural American conversational tone, keeping your storytelling style. There's something I've noticed after years of watching how people think about money. A lot of people believe that once they reach a certain level, everything will finally feel okay. They don't really know what that number is, but in their head, there's always this vague feeling, just a little more than where I am right now. What's interesting is, many people have already gone beyond where they were multiple times, but that feeling of being okay never really arrives. And I started to realize something. Maybe the problem isn't how much money you have. Maybe it's how you define where you stand. Main point 1, you're not really comparing money. You're comparing your sense of where you are. I've noticed something most people don't pay attention to. When you think about money, you almost never look at the number by itself. You always place it in a context. Here's a simple example. You make $600 a month. If the people around you are making $400, you'll feel like you're doing okay. But if everyone around you is making $1,000 to $1,200, that exact same number suddenly feels like it's not enough. What's interesting is, nothing changed in your bank account, but your feeling changed completely. I realize that humans are not good at evaluating money in absolute terms. We always evaluate it relatively. Most people don't notice that. What makes you feel okay or not okay is not the amount of money you have. It's where you think you stand compared to the people around you. And that's why some people make a lot of money, but still feel like it's not enough, while others with average income feel pretty at ease. Not because they have more, but because they're not constantly changing their measuring stick. Main point 2. The feeling of almost enough is a psychological trap. I noticed something interesting when watching how people set financial goals. They rarely say, "I want to reach this number," and stop. Instead, they usually say something very familiar. "I just need a little bit more." It sounds reasonable, but in reality, it's dangerous. Because a little bit more is a goal with no finish line. A very common example. When you don't have much, you think, if I had $5,000, I'd be fine. When you get there, your brain doesn't stop. It automatically adjusts. Actually, $10,000 would feel safer. Then when you reach $10,000, it keeps going. Maybe $25,000 just to be sure. What's interesting is, every time you get closer to the goal moves a little further away. I realize that our brains are not designed to feel enough. They're designed to keep wanting more. Most people don't notice that. The feeling of almost enough is exactly what keeps you from ever feeling enough. It creates a very strange state. You always feel like you're making progress, but never feel like you've arrived. And when that goes on long enough, you start to feel tired, not because you don't have money, but because you don't have a clear stopping point. Main point 3. Income grows faster than your sense of security, but it doesn't last. I've noticed something many people experience, but rarely talk about. When your income increases, your sense of security increases too, but only for a short time. A very familiar situation. The first time you get a meaningful raise, you feel relieved. You think, finally, things are getting better. But just a few months later, your spending starts to shift. Things that once felt unnecessary now feel normal. A better phone, a more comfortable place to live, eating out a little more often as a reward. Nothing extreme. Everything feels reasonable. But what's interesting is that initial sense of security starts to fade, and then you return to a familiar thought. Maybe I still need just a little more. I realize that the problem isn't that you don't earn enough. It's that your definition of enough keeps changing with your income. Most people don't notice that. Higher income does not automatically create stability. Without clear boundaries, your lifestyle quietly expands. And as your lifestyle grows, so does your pressure. The result is you earn more, but you don't feel more secure. Here's your translation in natural American conversational tone, consistent with your storytelling style. Main point 4. The real difference isn't the amount of money, it's the gap. I realized something very simple, but it completely changed how I look at money. Two people can earn almost the same income, but their financial experience feels completely different. One is constantly stressed. The other feels pretty relaxed. What's interesting is that difference usually isn't about income. It comes down to something most people overlook: the gap between what comes in and what goes out. Here's a simple example. Person A makes $800 a month and spends $720. Person B also makes $800 but spends $560. On paper, they don't look that different. But in real life, Person B has breathing room. Person A doesn't. I realize that financial security doesn't come from how much you make. It comes from one thing: after you live your life, how much is left. Most people don't notice that. When that gap is too small, you're always under pressure. A small, unexpected expense can stress you out. One bad decision can throw you off balance. But when the gap is large enough, you start to have choices. You can say no to something that doesn't feel right. You can slow down without fear, and that's what creates a real sense of control. Not a big number, but flexibility. Main point 5. People who change their financial position don't just earn more, they change how they play the game. I've noticed something very clearly when I look at people who gradually improve their finances. They don't suddenly change their lives. They don't make huge moves, but they change something much more important: how they interact with money every day. A simple example: they don't try to control everything. They design small but stable systems. They automatically move a portion of income into savings. They keep fixed limits for recurring expenses. They avoid having to make too many financial decisions every day. What's interesting is these changes look very small. They don't feel like breakthroughs, but over time, they create a completely different trajectory. I realized that people who move forward aren't more disciplined. They just reduce how much they have to try. Most people don't notice that. You don't need to make better decisions every day. You need a system so you don't have to make so many decisions. When that happens, your money becomes more stable, and your mindset becomes more stable too. And slowly, your position starts to change, not in a month, but over years. Conclusion: after all these observations, I realized something. Most people don't lack the ability to earn money. They lack a clear understanding of where they stand. And when you don't know where you are, it's very easy to chase numbers with no finish line. But when you start to understand who you're comparing yourself to, what enough actually means for you, where your gap really is, and how your system works, everything becomes clearer. You don't need to move fast. You don't need to go big. You just need to move in the right direction for long enough. If this video made you rethink the way you look at money, go ahead and hit like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.